Welcome to my channel. Mira sat at the edge of the bed, her fingers pressing against the tender ache along her ribs. The dim glow of the bedside lamp traced the fine lines around her eyes, evidence of years that moved faster than she cared to admit. She exhaled slowly, the pressure in her chest heavier than the quiet of the room. Behind her, Daniel shifted beneath the sheets. His body sprawled in the careless abandon of deep sleep. His presence was undeniable, his broad shoulders rising and falling with each breath, his youth radiating even in rest. Mira envied that about him, the way his body moved without hesitation, without fear of breaking. She closed her eyes and let her mind drift back to the first time she had traced those same shoulders with her fingertips, marveling at the strength beneath. Back then, she had been drunk on the thrill of being desired by someone so full of life, someone who made her feel as if time had not yet caught up with her. But time had always been patient. It waited, lingering in the spaces between their laughter, in the pauses after each kiss. And now it had found her, settling into her bones, whispering doubts into the quiet corners of her mind. She pulled her robe around herself and slipped out of bed, her feet silent against the cool wooden floor. In the bathroom mirror, she barely recognized the woman staring back at her. She tilted her head slightly, running a hand over her collarbone, down to where her ribs throbbed in protest of the night before. Daniel loved her passionately. Too passionately. He was never cruel, never forceful, only full of a hunger that she once matched. But now, each touch, each moment of closeness, left her feeling both cherished and exhausted. The contradiction gnawed at her. Mira! His voice was thick with sleep, but even in his grogginess there was concern. She hesitated before stepping back into the bedroom. I didn't mean to wake you. Daniel sat up, rubbing his eyes before looking at her with that boyish sincerity she had always adored. Are you in pain again? She forced a smile. Just a little sore. I'll be fine. He reached for her, his fingers brushing against her wrist, gentle but insistent. I don't want to hurt you, he said, his voice quieter now. She wanted to tell him that it wasn't his fault, that her body wasn't the same as it once was, that loving him should never feel like a battle against her own limits. But how could she say that without making him feel like too much? Without making herself feel like not enough? Instead, she kissed his forehead and whispered, Go back to sleep, love. She turned before he could ask anything more, knowing that questions would only lead to answers she wasn't ready to face. The next morning, she met Elena at their favorite cafe, a small place tucked away from the city's noise. The scent of freshly brewed coffee wrapped around her like an old comfort. Elena stirred her drink lazily before narrowing her eyes at Mira. You look tired. Mira forced a chuckle. That's a nice way of saying I look like hell. Elena didn't smile. It's Daniel, isn't it? Mira sighed, staring into the swirling foam of her cappuccino. He's wonderful. But sometimes, I feel like I'm trying to keep up with something that's already running ahead of me. Elena studied her, then leaned in. Are you afraid he'll leave? The question struck deeper than Mira expected. Was that it? The fear that one day, Daniel would wake up and see her for what she was. Older, fragile, incapable of giving him the kind of love he needed. I don't know, she admitted. I love him. But loving him and keeping up with him feel like two different things. Lena sighed. Then talk to him. Mira nodded, but deep down she wasn't sure if words would be enough. As she reached for her phone, a notification blinked at her screen. A name she hadn't seen in years. Ethan. Her breath caught. Message. Just one line. I thought of you today. A memory stirred, unbidden. A touch, a voice, a love that had once felt effortless. Mira's fingers hovered over the screen. She knew better than to respond. Knew that even opening that door, even just a crack, could change everything. Yet, as Elena spoke, Mira found herself barely listening. Because for the first time in a long time, she felt something other than exhaustion. She felt alive. Mira read the message again. I thought of you today. The words were simple, unassuming, yet they wrapped around her like a whisper from the past. She tightened her grip on the phone, her heartbeat quickening. A decade had passed since she had last spoken to Ethan. He had been a different kind of love, steady, familiar, like an old song she could hum without effort. Until one day, without warning, he had left. Mira. She blinked, realizing Elena was watching her. Quickly, she locked her screen and forced a smile. Sorry, just a work email. Elena arched a skeptical brow but let it go. You should take a break, you know. You carry too much. Mira exhaled slowly. I don't have the luxury of stopping. Then at least stop pretending you don't need to. The words clung to her as she drove home, a quiet reminder of the weight she refused to acknowledge. She told herself she wouldn't think of Ethan again. But by nightfall, her resolve had already frayed. Daniel was in the kitchen when she walked in, the scent of roasted garlic and thyme filling the space. He glanced over his shoulder and smiled. Hey, you're home early. She nodded, setting her purse down. It was a slow day. He turned back to the stove, stirring the pan. I made your favorite. Thought we could have a quiet night in. A familiar guilt curled inside her. He was always thoughtful, always trying. Yet here she was, standing in the same room, feeling miles apart. She crossed the kitchen, wrapped her arms around him from behind, and rested her head against his back. You're too good to me. He laughed softly. That's the idea. Mira closed her eyes, wanting to absorb this moment, to remind herself why she had chosen him. He was kind, devoted, hers. But as he turned and kissed her temple, another name flickered at the edge of her thoughts. Ethan. She pulled away before Daniel could see the hesitation in her face. Later that night, when Daniel was asleep beside her, Mira lay awake, her phone resting on the nightstand. The screen was dark, but she knew the message was still there, waiting. Her fingers hovered over the device before she gave in, unlocking it with a quick swipe. The cursor blinked in the empty reply box. She shouldn't. But she did. Why now? The response came faster than she expected. 'Cause I never stopped thinking about you. A chill ran through her, but not from fear. From something dangerously close to longing. Ethan, we haven't spoken in years. No. And I'm sorry. But I saw something today that reminded me of you. It made me wonder how you've been. She hesitated. This was a game she shouldn't play. But curiosity was a patient beast. And it had been starving for far too long. I've been fine. Married now. Was. Is he good to you? She glanced at Daniel's sleeping form. The rise and fall of his chest. The familiar warmth of his presence. Yes. Then why are you answering me? Her breath hitched. Ethan had always known how to read between the lines. She locked the phone and set it down, pressing her hands to her face. She needed to stop this. Needed to pretend that opening this door hadn't stirred something restless inside her. But as she lay back against the pillows, staring at the ceiling, one truth settled in her chest like a stone. She had left the door ajar. And part of her wanted it to stay that way. Mira spent the next morning pretending. Pretending she hadn't spent half the night staring at the ceiling, Ethan's words circling like a whispered secret. Pretending her heart hadn't stammered each time her phone lit up, only to find it was just an email or a routine notification. By the time she walked into the kitchen, Daniel was already dressed, sipping his coffee at the counter. He looked up and smiled, a lazy, affectionate grin that had once made her stomach flutter. Morning, he said, reaching for her waist as she passed. She let him pull her close, but something in the gesture felt off-kilter, like a melody played just slightly out of tune. She pressed a kiss to his cheek, the motion automatic, then moved toward the coffee pot. Daniel leaned against the counter, watching her. You okay? Mira hesitated for half a second before nodding. Of course. Just didn't sleep well. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. Daniel studied her a moment longer, as if weighing whether to push. But then he set his mug down and stretched. You've been working too hard. Maybe we should take a weekend trip. Get away from everything for a bit. Weekend away. Just the two of them. Before last night, she would have welcomed the idea, let it wash over her like a bomb. But now the thought unsettled her. Not because she didn't love Daniel, but because she wasn't sure if love alone was enough to drown out the echo of something unresolved. She spent the afternoon trying to lose herself in errands. She lingered too long in the grocery aisles, wandered through the bookstore without purpose. Anything to keep her from checking her phone, from acknowledging the anticipation threading through her veins. By the time she sat in her car, parked on the quiet edge of town, she had convinced herself that she wouldn't respond to Ethan again. That what had happened last night was a lapse in judgment, a foolish indulgence in nostalgia. Then, as if summoned by thought alone, her phone vibrated. Her pulse stuttered. She shouldn't look. But she did. I shouldn't have asked that last night. I don't want to cause trouble. Mira exhaled slowly, fingers tightening around the device. Then why did you? 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then again. 'Cause I needed to hear your voice. Sharp inhale. A moment too long before she responded. Then we can't. Another pause. No. But I wish we could. Her hands trembled as she set the phone down. She closed her eyes, resting her forehead against the steering wheel. Her thoughts an unraveled mess. This wasn't real. Not in the way that mattered. But wasn't it? Wasn't longing just another kind of truth? By the time she returned home, Daniel was on the couch, scrolling through his phone. He looked up as she walked in, his gaze lingering. "Hey," he said softly. Something in his tone made her pause. "Hey." Daniel set his phone aside, rubbing a hand over his jaw. "You've been somewhere else lately." Mira's breath caught. "What do you mean?" His eyes searched hers, careful but knowing. "You tell me." For a split second, panic gripped her. Did he know? Had she left some trace of guilt, some invisible thread connecting her to the past she had no business revisiting? She forced a laugh, light, dismissive. "I think you're imagining things." Daniel didn't smile. He just watched her, the silence between them louder than any accusation. And for the first time in their marriage, Mira realized something unsettling. He wasn't sure if he believed her. And neither was she.